Hi, this is Janossy. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the purpose and the construction of the course ebook, which I've indicated in my messages to you actually is the course GPH 205. First of all, let's take a look at a productive way to actually read the ebook. It is a PDF. You're going to use the Adobe Reader to read this, and it's probably already on your computer, be it a Windows PC or a Mac. If you double-click on this download, having placed it on your hard disk, it'll open this way. You can scroll through it, but that's not really a very handy way for you to take a look at it. If you go here, you can make it 100%, but that's still not fitting well on the screen. If you go here, however, and go to zoom to page level, it becomes a little more practical. And this way, when you scroll, it's going to roll up. That's still not as handy as it could be. If you go here to view, and you go to full screen mode, that makes it a little bit more visible, and I can use the right arrow key then to go through the book. And it should be fairly readable on your screen this way, but it's still not what you want in terms of reading this book, because you see, this was intended to be a printed workbook, and in fact by spring of 2012 it will be. It's the third edition of a book that I wrote about 7 years ago. The best way to take a look at this is actually to go to View, and then to go to the Page Display, and to go to the two-page view. Something that you need to do in connection with that to properly read this book is to make sure that this is checked. Show the cover in two-page view. And what that means is, when we go to two-page view with those selections, the cover will stand by itself, but as I use the right mouse button to move forward, now you'll see it as if you had opened up a printed workbook and you're seeing the facing pages. This is important in the case of this workbook because I've arranged these pages to make sense. Information on facing pages is related. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes going through this workbook with you and showing you what I had in mind for it. I'll show you this front part, which is purely administrative, and then we'll get into the part that deals with the actual subject matter of the course. This workbook contains a lot of original writings, things that I've brought together, written originally, or in some cases extracted from various sources and edited them down to make them fit the purpose of this course, which is to understand the history and the technology behind art from the very earliest days up until the present, visual technology. If I continue flipping through this, you'll see there's a variety of textual pages and then a lot of topics that are addressed in one page each. This is kind of important because I try to make this concise so that I can give you lectures in little snippets related to these pages. Not many of these articles go on for more than a facing page. And the idea is that each of them addresses an issue that I'll consider perhaps separately in a small little lecture that you get to by either a symbol that you saw on previous pages called a quick response code, or by the page number. The videos that I put out on video playlists at YouTube, in this case, will refer to these page numbers. So you can actually be taking a look at the page and accessing the lecture that I would be giving on it right there, right where it makes the most sense. So as you go through this, there will be some pages that have these symbols and an active link. And let me just show you what happens in the case of this page. Here we're talking about these perfect solids, 5 solids that the ancients knew about that seem to have some special properties. Well, look what we can do with electronics. By clicking on this active hyperlink, you're directed to a website where I've put this page up so that you can take a look at these rather colorful renditions of those 5 solids. But you can also click on these and you go to a site that has been conveniently provided by another party, and you can actually see these things in more or less 3D and play with them by moving the cursor like this and making them tumble and spin around. Or you can explode them so you can see what the surfaces are. in this case triangles. If you go back, you can take a look at another one. I'm going to hop down to a much more complex one. And in this case, we can play with it this way. So what I do in this workbook is to build playlists behind each page being focused on a topic makes finding related videos and putting them into a playlist for the page easier. So instead of doing lectures in 90-minute segments, you'll find the lectures here are done in page-length segments, a few minutes per lecture. I've written here about 30 pages worth of material that talks about the ancients, and it talks about light, and this talks about paint, where paint comes from, the various ways that it's made. It leads up to a couple of pieces of work that are due in each one of the 4 units of this course. So in these materials you have, within one unit, all of those assignments. And what you're looking at here is a hands-on project. I'll go through this in greater detail in another video, but just to summarize, you do a project like this where I define for you what it is that you have to do. Many times these projects have related videos, little pieces of a lecture. Here in Project 1, if you click on this hyperlink, you're redirected to a playlist, and these videos, which you can see are rather short, 8 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, for a total of 15 minutes. This is the kind of lecture that I would have attempted to give in a classroom if this class were meeting physically. But here, I've laid these things out so that you can view them on your own. And what you'll find here is videos where I show you how to take the actions that are necessary. So for example, let's take a look at this one. And you can go through that whole thing when you're doing this assignment. Let's take a quick look at what the 3 items are of work that you have to do in every one of these units. You've looked at one thing here, which is the project, and in some cases, projects have extra credit. In fact, in these units, you can always do some extra credit, which is optional, and is related to the main subject matter of the project. The project, by the way, covers things related to the subject matter of the unit. Now I'm going to go back to where I've indicated for you what the 3 pieces of work are that you're responsible for doing within each one of these units. Back here on page 10 is a summary of what's coming up in this unit. The units are broken up by weeks. This whole unit lasts 3 weeks. The first unit I assign greater amount of time to because there's always some startup problems and delays at the beginning of the term, perhaps getting books. Some people even register 1 week into the term. So it's better if we spread this out and have 3 weeks for the first unit of a course. You've got reading to do in the story of art. You've got reading to do originally indicated in the visual technology workbook. However, I'm doing you a favor this term. The workbook that was originally specified is edition 2. My original plan was to have you do some assignments from there, and I would give you additional pages in this ebook that are actually part of the 3rd edition of the workbook. However, to make things easier, what I'm doing now is taking things from the earlier edition and putting them into this ebook right now. You don't have to buy the Visual Technology Workbook. That's an extra book that this entire ebook replaces. In the spring term, this 3rd edition of the ebook will be in print form. Publisher will have it done, and we'll go back to doing 2 books for this course, the story of art and a published workbook. And at that point, what you see on these pages becomes much more relevant. Here's why. Right now, these little links are hot. That is, if you click on them, you go to some place. In this case, the playlist for the videos for these readings. And here you see an introduction and various videos that represent my lectures, a little preview of the lecture beforehand, and then very short videos that I have located and made accessible to you. Very focused videos. You can see that none of them are very lengthy. They're 5 minutes and 3 minutes and 4 minutes for a total of only 39 minutes. including my lecture for that week. Well, that's a lot shorter period of time than you would have spent in a classroom getting this same information, and you might have still had to view some videos on your own. This is one reason I think the online format makes a lot of sense if it's properly arranged. And it turns out it can be arranged this way with a lot of free resources, like here we have YouTube. Let me get out of there. Let's go back to here. I was explaining why this is relevant. This is a hot link right now for you, and you can see how I used it. If I was reading this ebook on a computer, a laptop perhaps, I could just click it and I could watch the videos. However, when this becomes a print workbook, of course, on paper, this is not going to be a hot link. That's why I came up with this short URL redirector mechanism, so that manually entering this is not very difficult. It's always the same in front. Zoom to me, a slash, and then a short little, usually 3 characters, perhaps sometimes 4, here only 2. Entering this manually is not a problem. But this symbol here is kind of magic. What it does is encode this URL. And even at this point, if you were to print this, and you had a smart cell phone or an iPod or an iPad or a tablet computer with a camera, you could scan this quick response code and you would immediately go to this website to view the video. So in the future, what I envision happening, since so many people have these smart devices, these mobile devices, you could have this workbook as a printed workbook, not very expensive because it's all black and white. If you then were reading a page where a lecture was present to help explain the material, by way of this quick response code, you could quickly watch the related video on your mobile device at the time that you're looking at this page. And that's about as close as I can come to a classroom experience, but even better, because you can do this whenever you want to, wherever you are, and you can do it with your mobile device. You don't have to be in a classroom. You can review it any number of times. You can pause this video as if you're telling me to stop my lecture so you can catch up to things. It does amount to learning on your own, but in a way that's similar to a classroom experience. And that's why I think this is a superior way to arranging learning materials. However, I will apologize. You do have a bit of awkwardness at this point. I'm just in the middle of casting this into its final form, which is why there was a slight delay in getting this up for you. And you're going to be getting this unit by unit, because, in fact, it would be rather large and bulky for me to give you at one time, and I'm still staying ahead of the class at this point and recasting these materials into the 3rd edition of the workbook. That's the reality of this term. You benefit by not having to buy this in printed form, but on the other hand, if you wanted to print this, you will have to do that on your own. Now, there is something that you will want to print. Here are the 3 items of work that you're responsible for in this unit. Let me recap them. A repeatable exercise, this QR code, or this active link, will get you to that site. And the first time you visit this site, you need to create an account for yourself. That account creates a password. That's the password you use here. This first time through, you're going to get yourself an account, and then you'll establish your password and log in. And at that point, on a different screen than this, you're asked for the enrollment key for the course that you're attempting to enroll in, and then you will go directly to the exercise. Let me demonstrate how that exercise works right now. I'll put in a password that I already have. You go directly to the exercise, and you'll see this exercise opened at the beginning of the term, and it closes when the unit closes. When I go to the exercise, I'm getting this on a screen. And all the exercises consist simply of 5 questions. Each question has 10 true-false statements. And you go along here and you check mark the true statements. That's as simple as these exercises are. Read the material about the exercises and you'll see that these are repeatable for a reason. My advice is to do 1 question at a time, choosing the statements that you feel are true, and then submit all and finish. When you do that, you're going to see how you did. And in this case, I got 0. But you're not going to see this sort of thing. I see that because I'm an instructor. You won't see this because if you saw it, you would go through this exercise exactly twice. The second time, you would have unclicked things that were clicked badly or clicked things that you omitted, and you would do it perfectly. Well, that's not the point. Although this does count for your grade, the reason for this is for you to get a perfect set of check marks here. That's why I suggest that you do this one question at a time and you use something to take notes. And I'm going to show you what that something is at this time. The notes that you want to use to work on this repeatable exercise are actually here. Read this information on page 13 about the study guide for exercises. Here are the questions, and here are the statements. So I've given you these in a form that I strongly recommend you do print. Pages, in this case, 14 through page 19, you'll want to print. And as you go through this material, and the readings, and the videos, what you want to do is check mark these statements. This is what you're looking for out of those readings and videos. A good understanding of which of these statements are true and which ones are false. Then you take these notes and focus on one question and go in and do the exercise and see how you did on that question. Go back and review if you didn't get a perfect score. Every one of these is worth 10 points. But not every one of these is worth the same value. And these change sequence every time you do the exercise, so you do have to read the statements. Now, the reason I use this kind of an exercise is research done by others has shown that when people interact with material and have to go back and review and perfect their knowledge, they actually learn it better. So this kind of an exercise is instantly graded homework. And you can do this exercise any number of times while the unit is in effect, while the unit is open. So this exercise for Unit 1 will close on January 21st. Up until January 21st at 11:55 p.m., you'll be able to work on this any number of times. That's one thing that you work on throughout the unit. Something you work on towards the end of the unit, although not too close to the end, is a unit summary form. Now this, if you click here, will download the unit summary form, which is a word processing document that you fill in. I don't think this QR code will be so useful for you on this, but I included it here anyway. On page 12, you see what the first USF looks like, the unit summary form. And I filled in the first row for you, just to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So for each of these civilizations or artistic movements, you need to find information about these 4 things: the purpose of the art they created, the rules they followed in creating that art, the technologies they used, the pigments or other kinds of things they used to create the artwork, and then this one, which is really important: what is the impact of this civilization and its art on modern life? So this one is what it means today, because we know about that, and these people did what they did. In some cases, there won't be much impact. In other cases, for example, with the Greeks, there'll be very significant impacts. You take this as a document that you downloaded, and you use whatever word processor you wish to fill in this information by highlighting these existing 3 X's and putting in the information that you want to put into that box. You go on to complete all these boxes, and then you want to send this to me in whatever word processing document form you wish. I will grade this and give you feedback. Then you have up to 7 days to revise your work based on my feedback and turn it back in for regrading. In that 7-day period, you again interact with the material, this time a slightly different way than with an exercise, and you learn it better. And your grade goes up if you make the corrections necessary. I regrade it. I will give you feedback then confirming how much additional credit you have gotten for that. So there's 2 items. The third item is the project that you already saw that occurs at the end of the unit. That's what happens in every one of these units. And the pages that look like this are really important because this drives everything for the unit. There'll be a facing page like this that gives you the links for the exercise and for the summary form. In the case of every unit, the project is always at the end of the unit. I'm going to conclude this piece of a lecture, and some of the pages that follow, I will have lectures that you can access by way of these URLs. I actually was a bit too liberal and generous in putting these symbols in because in looking at it now, I don't think some of these pages require too much more additional explanation in this administrative area. But I will put something behind every one of these URLs so that you don't think something is missing if you click on it. Well, I hope this makes some sense for you in terms of the way this course is laid out. I've put the information into a workbook form and included hyperlinks in it because I want to spare you the grief of finding all of these separate things someplace on a website, especially here. When we get to this, these might have otherwise been separate PDFs that I put up on a website. In my experience, it's too messy if these things are scattered all over a website and you have to find them. I think it's better if we put them into this sort of a linear form so that it's all in one place for you and you don't have to waste a lot of time trying to find stuff on one or another website. It's finally occurred to me that if I view this process of learning in the university from a student's point of view, that this would be more productive than trying to fiddle around with some website that attempts to act like a classroom. In this case, this workbook is your classroom, and it comes alive with the multimedia that you can access from these links or these quick response codes. I'm interested in your feedback on this if you'd like to give me some. That's not a required part of the course, but I am refining this at the moment so that when it's published it will be as handy as possible for students in subsequent terms. That's as much as I'll say in this little piece of a lecture. Go on ahead to the remaining pages and tune into the lectures and see what I've got to say about those other pages.